Hello and welcome to all to my channel 10 minutes philosophy. In this video we'll be studying about rationalism, like what is rationalism basically, what rationalism means, how rationalism is different from empiricism, and why rationalism is well known of. We'll be studying philosopher René Descartes, what were the approaches and methods of the René Descartes for rationalism, and the very much famous method, that is Cartesian method. What is Cartesian method and what were the things he got deduced from it, how philosophy can be certain. This whole thing we'll be studying in this video. So here we start with rationalism. So rationalism is a theory of knowledge according to which reason or intellect is the main source of knowledge. Okay, and rationalism also rejects all knowledges which are derived from experiences, like what you see, what you feel, what you taste is not true knowledge according to rationalist. So like philosophers Plato and Socrates, those are rationalists, because according to Plato there is an idea in the world of idea, then that comes to your brain, then that idea get reflected into the reality. So anyhow it is a play of idea, and that idea was there in your intellect. That intellect is a main source of knowledge, that what rationalism talks about. So we can say like Plato and Socrates were the earliest rationalists also. Okay, so according to them, true knowledge originates from reason, right? The idea, the concept of idea which we saw. If you want to link this concept, you can do like this. There are philosophers in rationalism who advocated this philosophy were Descartes, Spinoza and Leibniz. Okay, the rationalist philosophers differ among themselves regarding how much importance should be given to experience in yielding knowledge. Some rationalists regard experience as wholly misleading, while others attach some values to it, and we will see who are them who attach values as we go ahead. They say that knowledge given by experience is confused knowledge, and some of them clearly rejects it, like they say no, this is not true, this is false. But in spite of their differences, they all agree that the reason alone can give us the certain and perfect knowledge. Okay, and rationalism is also called a priori theory of knowledge. That is, your knowledge is already there in your brain, and it is very independent of the experiences. Okay, so daily experiences से वो बहुत independent होता है, right? So here we start. I'll just give you the brief introduction of Descartes, and so yeah. So you might be seeing a picture in the slide which talks about how we know, like the lips, ears, the gestures, eyes and nose. These are the sources for the experiential knowledge. But according to rationalists, it is the brain, it is the caliber which you have, right? So René Descartes, starting with René Descartes' philosophy shows the characteristics of modern philosophy mentioned earlier. It was who first to rid philosophy of all subjective prejudices and to place it on the same plane as science, which was objective as mathematics. He also stressed that the practical aspects of knowledge and attached great importance to philosophy being useful from the practical standpoint, right? So always he was very much concerned with the subjectivity which is present in philosophy and how to get rid of it. And he thinks science and mathematics are very much certain and that certainty should be there in philosophy. So he wrote, philosophy is a perfect knowledge. He wrote, philosophy, please write this somewhere, and if you use these sentences, you'll get the marks. Philosophy is a perfect knowledge of all that man can know, as well as for the conduct of his life, as for preservation of his health, and the discovery of all the arts. Right? So Descartes was impressed with science and mathematics and wanted philosophy to be no less practical and exact. And it was this that led him to adopt a mathematical methodology in his solution of philosophical problems. He decided to employ only proved and probable means and looked down with contempt on the medieval philosophers' thinking, which clearly showed that stamp of faith. Right? It was only natural that he should have accepted reason as the final citation in the field of philosophy. Since reason is subjective, the process of thinking must also be said to depend upon individual's effort. And Descartes' system of thought exhibits all characteristics of modern philosophy like naturalism, scientific orientation, and freedom of thought. And it is for this reason that he was known as the father of modern philosophy. There were many tendencies of thoughts which gave rise, later they got developed and got flowered in the hands of thinkers who followed them, like as we also know, like Spinoza, Leibniz. So these were the approaches. Like first approach was rationalism, like rationalistic tendency, which first appeared in Descartes' thought, developed in Spinoza's philosophy, and reached its zenith in philosophy of Leibniz. Don't worry, I'll give you an explanation on these particular terms as well, and as we go further we will understand what was the philosophy of Spinoza and what was the philosophy of Leibniz when they were in rationalism. Okay, then it also went off to mathematical method. Descartes was the first to adopt the mathematical method in his philosophy, but it later got evolved in geometric method of Spinoza. Leibniz adopted and modified it in a scientific manner when he talks about monads, monadology. We'll study this, don't worry. And there was a scientific approach. Like Descartes looked at the philosophy from the standpoint of the scientist and defining the boundaries between the material and the mental. He freed science from religion and spiritualism. The philosophy of Leibniz and Spinoza were obvious, putting Descartes' scientific philosophy into practical shapes. Practicability. Descartes looked upon philosophy not merely as a mental gymnastics, but something which could guide a person to give a practical life. Then philosophical problems. Descartes had considered relation between mind and body, then the form and content of nature, etc., etc. Okay, so Cartesian method was propounded by Descartes. He was a rationalist and mathematical method of philosophy to obtain certitude in knowledge. In his method, Descartes laid down that knowledge to be obtained must be certain, necessary, and universal. Please underline this word: certain, necessary, and universal. Okay, and to him, such certainty and universality was exhibited only by maths, since no doubts and the axioms of it. He tried to analyze and find out the universal and real elements of the subject, which raised it beyond. Through this analysis, he arrived at mathematical method and applied to philosophy, like 2 plus 2 is always 4, it is not 5. So he wanted that level of certainty in his philosophy. Okay, so method, like one proceeds from self-evident axioms to accept without question. Through his one proceed to some implied propositions through deductions which are also certain. Like when we say all crows are black, all crows are black. there is a crow, therefore that crow is black. This is the certainty, like this is a logical framework, right? All men are mortal, Socrates was man, therefore Socrates is mortal. So after doing Cartesian method, he had 4 deductions, or you can say the rules of his self guidance. He always emphasized on never accept anything as true unless it is clearly known as such, never to accept those things. Second one was divide the difficulties into as many parts as possible, so the smaller part, the easier it will be to understand, right? And commence the third one is to commence with the simplest object and ascend step by step towards more complex. Okay. And the fourth one was in every case enumeration should be complete, that nothing is omitted. So these were the 4 principle or self-guiding principles for him, which he took, and he went off to do his philosophy. And here we stop. In the next chapter, in the next video, we'll be starting with method of doubts, and slowly we will cover whole of René Descartes, because sometimes it is very tough and it is very easier to divide into as many as parts. Okay, so stay tuned for the next video, and thank you. If you have any questions, please comment and let me know. So we'll meet in the next video. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Bye.